Welcome to Argus. I'm going to do another quick demonstration of how to create a spinning cube, as in the demo. We'll begin by naming the film. Always a good thing to do at the start of a film. We'll name it Cube, and as with any new film, you need to make sure the base texture file path points to the right place. If you click the red light, it will go off. Now we can click that and a search box will appear, so I can find Argus there, Films, Argus Cube, and it points to it. It was pointing to it before, but I just thought I'd reinforce and show you how to do this. Here's where we set the frames per second for playing. This is the screen size and the background colour. Now we'll create an object. As with all new films, you'll see it starts with two tracks. The camera track with the camera placed at -7 and a light track with a light placed at -7 as well. Right, so let's create an object which is called a costume in Argus terminology. I'll right click and we get an option of some primitives. So I'll pick the two-sided cube. So it will have faces inside and outside, which is useful for a transparent object, a transparent texture, which is what this cube texture is. We're pointing to this Argus Cube folder, which looks like this. It contains one texture called Argus Face. It's the same texture. You've got PNG format and DDS format. DDS format is the one that's used by Argus, direct draw surface. You're going to need to manipulate DDS files when using Argus. That's simply a limitation. Let's have a look at the cube. So I'll create a track, insert track. If I use the arrow keys, I can move the cursor around, or I can just click. But I'll go to frame, make sure I'm on frame 0, press Q, and I've created our object. Actor number 3 is called two-sided cube. Costume number 1, so it's pointing at this. Actor number 3 here, I've made it actor number 3 appear. Frame 0, which is what this 0 means. And it's simply called texture at the moment, so it's not pointing at a texture. If I hit F1, it takes me into the 3D view, so that's the view of our cube already. And if I hit F1 again, switch the view off. I'll name it, what was the texture called? It was called Argus Face. So I'll name it Argus Face. And now if I hit F1, ta-da! And you'll see, because the cube is transparent, you're seeing a bit of the back face as well, upside down. Now we'll make the cube rotate. That's a matter of adding a movement, a modulator to these things. So these pink boxes are all modulators attached to the actor, which effectively control its default movements, the way it moves when it appears. Let's add an X angle. Let's make that a saw wave. All the angles in Argus are based in radians, which means pi 3.141 etc. is 180 degrees. Now if we right click on depth, we get an option of types of pi. So we'll have pi, which is 180 degrees. So this means that the angle will vary from -180 down to 0, down to +180, which is exactly what you'd want if you are making something that loops forever. Length 25 frames, so every 25 frames it'll zip through this, zip, 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 like this. And that's attached to the X angle of this object, so let's have a look at it. And now if I run the film by pressing F5, there we are. The X angle is now spinning based on that modulator pattern. Isn't it a quick way of making an animation? If I use the left and right arrow keys, you can step through frame by frame. If at any point I hit F12, I could take a screenshot, which is useful for checking purposes, checking your animation. I'll hit F1 again, and we get back to the Windows view. Get back to frame 0. And let's create another another angle, an angle Y, an angle Z, so we can spin it in different angles. I'll clone this modulator so it's the same one, same shape, that is, and number 2. If you wanted to use exactly the same modulator, you could just type number 1 into the box. That's fine. That's the whole advantage of the system. You don't need to create new things every time. You might want to reuse them. But in this case, I'm going to change the speed. So I'm going to make this a bit slower. In fact, I'll make it half the speed. Why not 50? And oh, I've accidentally deleted the event then. Create it again. And then clone again. Number 3. I'll create this again. Speed, I'll make it 75, even slower. So we've got 3 rotations. We've got this rotation, which is X, Y, and Z. Now, if you choose from the menu, auto name all modulators, it will actually name them after the motion, which is incredibly useful. We're still starting in the same place. We've still got our little tiny little line of an event. They're mostly for guidance. They're so tiny, but it does mean you've got one event exactly per frame, because 1 pixel equals 1 frame here. It means you can see a massive amount of the film at a glance, which is a massive advantage. Let's take a look at our film, and there it is. Let's hit F5. There we are, rotating through all those angles at those exact speeds. Now let's do something a bit more interesting. Let's create another object. Let's shift that whole thing to the side a little bit. I'll send it to -1. See where that is. There it is. It's over on that side. -1, that is. Now I'll create another one. And this time I'll set it at maybe 2, perhaps. So this should be, we should have a second cube now that appears on the right. You can see this is actor 3, also actor 3. So it's exactly the same object. These are both Argus face, they're called. That was named when I typed the texture. When I type the texture name, it renames the costume, and that renames the actor. It does this upwards in a hierarchical way. So if I rename this Argus box, it will rename the actor for me automatically, so which is useful to know what is what. So now we should have 2 objects in our scene. One starting at X position -1, one at X position 2. Let's hit F1 to see what it looks like. There we are. They're both moving in exactly the same fashion, because that's what these modulators do. But we can move it. So I can hold Shift and make a selection, and I can do a standard Control Z for cut. Of course, Control X is cut. Cool. Why on earth did I say Control Z? Control X is cut. Cut, copy and paste, XZ. XCV, exactly as the standard. Let's place this on frame 50. So on frame 0, the cube appears. On frame 50, the second cube appears. So let's see what that looks like. Frame 0. And pow! There you go. Dead on frame 50, the second one appeared. Pow! Hit F1 again. And you can see how easy it is just to create objects and animations and have them move how you want. We can control any of the other parameters. So let's change the size of this one. 0.5. So this should be half the size now. If we look at our scene, where we are, half the size. You'll see it's moving. The 2 cubes don't look identical, even though their movements are identical. And it's because, of course, this one started later, because it's running through these 3 modulators at the same speed, but because this one started a bit later, it's slightly out of sync with the first one. It's as simple as that. So it's as easy as that to create and control an object and make it appear. I mean, we could make it move in a different way. For example, if you attach a modulator to X. So let's try that. We'll attach a sine wave. Sine wave L means loop. So we'll make it loop over 100 frames. That's 4 seconds. You can actually right click, choose seconds, type 4. Exactly 4. That will be 4 seconds long. The timing is really, really accurate. So I've gone to great lengths to make sure that that's exactly 4 seconds. I'll hit F1 again, and now position X should do this. We'll see. That means they'll wobble side to side. Let's have a look, see if it does. There we are. Snaking side to side in 4 second loops. So that's how to create a simple animation. And in a very short time, I've created quite a complicated thing. And you can see how by modifying these modulators, which are all WAV files and therefore very easy to create and edit, you can create a huge variety of very complicated movements. You can also attach modulators or detach modulators to any of these specific things programmatically in the editor. If I wanted to, for example, to turn off the wavy motion of this one, I could hit the R key to create a set modulator event. You don't need to know the keys, it helps, but they're all in here as well. Event, insert, set modulator, for example. The key R is shown in square brackets to help. But we've got a set modulator event R, and this is where you could programmatically add or change the motion of something. So we will do that. So on frame 67, we will switch off pos X. We light the red light, which means this becomes active. So suddenly the red light means switch that to 0. Because the red light is off here, they'll all be ignored. It won't turn off the angles, for example. Only the X will work. So let's look from frame 45. At frame 45, this cube should be on. This cube isn't yet, but at frame 50 it will be, and then at frame 67 it will stop moving. So let's have a look. Yeah, that's that frame. As we get to 50, pow, that appears and it snakes around, and at 67 stops moving. That's it. You'll notice it jumped. That's because you've switched the modulator off. You haven't just told it to stop, you've actually switched it off completely. It was moving around here and suddenly went pow. But it does indicate the sort of power you can use to make things move. It is possible to exactly retain where it was as well. Without going into massive amounts of depth, you can hit the D key, for example. That creates a move event which notes the exact position. See, the exact angles are all there of where it was at that time, where it would be if it kept modulating. It's really clever in calculating all of that. And that way you could have made it freeze in that position. Well, that's a guide to how to create the spinning cube in Argus and a brief glimpse of the things it can do. I guess the clever thing about it is that because it all works in 3D using game technology, you can preview everything live. Thanks for watching.